Remember Joel Sears about this time every Monday morning at 7:35. He is the president of the York County Taxpayers Council. And when it comes to tracking down the numbers, this guy's like a dog hanging onto a bumper. I'm serious. I mean, he grabs it and he studies it and he knows it better than anybody I know in the state of Pennsylvania. When I say a dog grabbing onto a bumper, I'm saying that with all kinds of cred given to him. We welcome Joel to the program. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
What a lead-in. Thank you. I'm doing fine.
We've never done one like that, and I thought that would – but you do. I mean, you grab onto some numbers and you go after it, and I like that. I like that there are people like you out there doing that kind of work. So that's only meant as a compliment, my friend. Anyway, what do you have for us this morning?
Well, we're in budget season, as we've said for the last couple of weeks, Gary, and the big deal at the local level is the 500 school districts scrambling toward the end of June to get their budgets in.
Mm-hmm.
They're all crossing their fingers and hoping that the governor's budget, at least a piece of it, will stick. And that's the part that distributes about $440 million of new basic education funding to the 500 districts. This new fair funding formula, and I'm going to add an extra F on it, I call it the flawed fair funding formula.
Okay,
so
all right.
Fair is a matter of interpretation. Was put in place about 3 years ago when it's used to distribute so-called new money. Everything prior to that, all the basic subsidy money prior to that was locked into the hold harmless formula. That was around $5.9 billion. Those dollars remain distributed as they were. So this new formula has no impact on that money.
Could I throw in, by the way, a definition of fair as it relates to that? Fair is when I get everything I want and the hell with everybody else. I mean, that kind of what fair is?
We're going to see that.
Yeah.
If you listen to some of these numbers that I've come up with, we're going to see exactly that. This fair funding formula is really kind of a convoluted mess that says you take your current student population, it's actually a 3-year average, you add on some additional student count to make up for things like poverty and English language support and those sorts of things, and you come up with what's called a weighted student average. And it's not really an average, but it's actually a weighted number. And you can see inflation to the tune of 2 to 3 times your actual student count by the time this calculation is done. That's what's used to prorate the money. And it's an attempt to try to equalize the districts based on the effort it takes to educate their kids. So at least in theory, let's say it's 3 times harder in one district than in another district. Based on these factors, they would get 3 times the per-student allocation.
Sounds very subjective.
That's how it operates.
Sounds very subjective when you talk about the other student parts of that. Am I reading that incorrectly?
It's completely subjective.
Yeah.
They tried to make it objective by defining a set of coefficients to give people a sense of just how much extra stress is placed on a school district because of things like poverty.
Right.
Or because of things like English language proficiency limitations.
Well, it's really just trying to justify that as a legitimate factor in here and
Correct.
see if they can sneak that by. But go ahead.
Make it obscure as possible. Then hit it with a median household income index, hit it with a local effort capacity index, which says what is the relative ease with which your district raises property taxes. That's what that means.
Okay.
Then prorate the money. Now, how does this actually shake down in reality? In the city of York, if the $440 million stays in the budget, they will get an allocation of $71 million from that. And if they were actually, now there's an argument that goes around the state. There's a group that's decided that if all of the $6.5 billion, all the old money and all the new money, were distributed according to the formula, then you'd be able to see how many districts around the state are underfunded. And here we go with depending on which glass you're looking through. York City is by that argument, York City would be underfunded by about $6.6 million.
Really?
York Suburban would be underfunded by $4.2 million.
Okay.
Philadelphia is underfunded by $113 million. And Pittsburgh is overfunded by $78 million.
Jiminy Christmas.
Oops.
Wouldn't that tell you this formula is not doing what it's supposed to do?
Oh, Gary, you stole my punchline.
I'm sorry. Let's take it back.
No, that's exactly the implication.
Right.
That's exactly what's going on. Now, let's take this a step further. Suppose, we have this discussion.
See, I was actually reasoning out as you were talking there, like they should be doing at the representative level, but go ahead.
Now, it took 12 months for the Basic Education Funding Commission to come up with these coefficients.
12 months it took him.
I'm going to tell you right now, we'll cut to the chase. I don't think anybody in Harrisburg looked beyond his nose to validate the formula.
Yeah, and nor did they ever.
Short term are magnified unbelievably when you start to use it to allocate real money. Not that $440 million is anything to sneeze at. If you allocate the $14 billion that would be necessary to eliminate school property tax, for example, let's do that.
Okay.
It's a valid formula. We should be able to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
City of York would get $167 million.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Their total local tax, including property tax and earned income tax, is $37 million. And their total budget last year was $140 million. They'd get $167 just to extinguish their $37 million of property tax. How's that for fair?
Holy smoke.
Holy smoke is right.
Yeah.
Suburban would get $15 million.
I should say holy smoke and mirrors, but go ahead, yeah.
$45 million.
Mm.
See how that works?
Mm-hmm.
Just,
about 40 seconds left. Give me the more. I always like the moral of the story here. Go ahead.
What was that, Gary?
About 40 seconds left. Give me the moral of the story. I always love when you do that.
Well, we're right back to what I just said. We are sitting here as Pennsylvanians every year hoping to get some kind of relief in our school property taxes. Elimination is the goal. We're trying to get a funding formula that actually puts the money where it's needed.
Wow.
We had that. We had the fair funding formula 12 years ago. Put it on the shelf and ignored it. That needs to be updated. The money needs to be allocated according to need, and there's a real way to do that, and it needs to be done by the state. We don't need more trickery, which, believe it or not, Gary, is going to lead to another layer of hold harmless to undo if these folks in Harrisburg ever wake up.
Joel Sears, thank you so much this morning for all your hard work on this. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome, Gary. I really appreciate the chance to share this information.